Tonight, we will go on a journey to explore the profound wisdom of Zen Buddhism through simple stories that carry ancient truths about finding peace. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. As we journey together through these stories, let your breathing slow naturally. There's nothing you need to understand perfectly. Just allow these teachings to wash over you, inviting your mind toward the deep rest it needs. These aren't complicated teachings. They're insights that speak directly to the restless mind, the worried heart, the body that can't quite settle into sleep. So relax. Take a slow, deep breath, and let's begin our journey together. There was a young man named Kai who lived in a small village at the base of the mountains. He worked in his family's shop, selling grain and supplies to travelers. His life was ordinary. He had a roof over his head, food to eat, work to do. By all measures, things were fine. But Kai couldn't sleep. Every night when he lay down, his mind would start racing. The thoughts came in waves, one after another, never stopping. He would toss and turn for hours, watching the darkness slowly turn to grey dawn, exhausted but unable to rest. Kai tried everything he could think of. He tried drinking warm milk before bed. He tried sleeping in different positions. He tried staying up late, hoping exhaustion would help. Nothing worked. The moment his head touched the pillow, his mind would begin to turn. One evening, an old traveler came through the village. The man had a peaceful quality about him that Kai noticed right away. As Kai measured out the grain, the traveler looked at him with kind eyes. "You look tired, young man. Do you sleep well?" The question caught Kai off guard. "No," he admitted. "I haven't slept well in months." The traveler smiled gently. "I used to have the same trouble. Then I realized something quite simple. I learned not to carry yesterday with me. Now there's nothing keeping me awake." This simple statement struck something in Kai. He realized he was carrying years of yesterdays, dragging them into each new night. That day, he finally decided he would leave town in search of answers. He had heard stories of wise teachers in the mountains, masters who understood peace in a way he didn't. Maybe they could show him what he was missing. He packed a simple bag with a few clothes and some food. He took his walking stick. And one morning before dawn, while his family still slept, he left the village and headed into the mountains. Kai walked for 3 days before he found the first temple. His feet were sore and his mind was still restless. The road had been long and dusty, winding through hills covered in pine trees. He had been alone with his thoughts the whole way, and those thoughts had not been kind companions. They had reminded him of things he said wrong 5 years ago. They had shown him images of all the ways tomorrow might go badly. They had asked him questions he couldn't answer. Why did you do that? What if this happens? How will you manage? The thoughts never stopped, like birds that wouldn't stop circling. As the sun began to set on the 3rd day, Kai saw a small temple tucked into the hillside. It was simple, made of weathered wood that had turned grey with age. There was a garden beside it, neat and carefully tended. Smoke rose from a chimney. Someone lived there. Kai approached slowly. He didn't want to disturb anyone, but he was tired and hungry and hoping for shelter. As he got closer, he saw an old man in the garden. The man was pulling weeds from around a row of vegetables. He moved slowly, carefully, as if each weed mattered. The old man didn't look up even though Kai knew he must have heard footsteps approaching. He just kept working, his hands gentle on the plants. Kai stopped at the edge of the garden and waited. It felt wrong to interrupt someone so focused. Finally, the old man sat back on his heels and looked at Kai. His face was weathered like the temple wood, lined with years, but his eyes were clear and bright. There was something peaceful about him that Kai noticed right away. It was like standing near a still pond. "You look tired," the old man said. His voice was quiet but strong. "I've been walking for 3 days," Kai replied. "I'm looking for teachers, people who understand peace. I heard there might be masters in these mountains." The old man smiled slightly. "I'm Hakuin. This is my temple. You're welcome to stay the night." Kai felt relief wash through him. "Thank you. I don't want to be any trouble." "No trouble," Hakuin said. He stood up slowly, brushing dirt from his hands. "Come inside when you're ready. There's rice and vegetables. Simple food." That evening, Kai sat across from Hakuin in the small temple room. They ate in silence. The rice was plain but warm. The vegetables were fresh from the garden. Kai noticed that Hakuin ate slowly, seeming to pay attention to each bite. There was no hurry in him. After the meal, Kai tried to explain why he had come. "Master Hakuin, I can't find peace. My mind never stops. At night, I lie awake thinking about everything. Things I did wrong. Things I need to do. I'm always somewhere else, never where I am. I thought maybe you could teach me how to be peaceful." Hakuin looked at him with gentle eyes. "Where are your thoughts right now?" Kai paused. "They're thinking about how to explain my problem to you, and also worrying about whether I'm saying it right, and also remembering something stupid I said to someone last month." "So you're not here," Hakuin said softly. "You're in the past and the future. But your body is here. Your breath is here. The room is here. Everything except your mind is here." Kai felt the truth of this. His body was sitting on the floor, but his mind was scattered across time like seeds thrown to the wind. "The mind likes to travel," Hakuin continued. "It goes backward to yesterday, last month, last year. It goes forward to tomorrow, next week, next year. It's almost never where the body is. This is why you have no peace. You're not living your life. You're living your thoughts about your life." Kai sat with this. "But how do I stop it?" "The thoughts just come." "You don't stop them," Hakuin said. "You just notice where you are. Right now, you're here, in this room, breathing. That's all that's actually happening. Everything else is a story your mind is telling." Hakuin poured tea for both of them. The sound of the water leaving the pot was clear in the quiet room. "Let me tell you about someone I knew once," he said. "There was a merchant named Tanaka who lived in a large town. He ran a successful shop selling cloth and thread. He had a good reputation, a comfortable home, a loving wife, and 2 healthy children. By all measures, his life was going well. But Tanaka couldn't sleep. Every night, he lay awake thinking about a business decision he had made 6 months earlier. He had turned down an opportunity to partner with another merchant. At the time, it had seemed like the right choice. The partnership had risks, and Tanaka was cautious by nature. But then the other merchant's business had grown quickly. He opened 3 new shops and became quite wealthy. Tanaka watched this happen and felt a terrible weight in his chest. He had made the wrong choice. He had missed his chance. He was a fool. Night after night, Tanaka replayed the decision in his mind. He imagined what he should have said differently. He pictured the wealth he would have now if he had chosen differently. He tortured himself with these thoughts until sleep became impossible. His wife noticed how tired he looked. His children noticed he was distracted and short-tempered. His work suffered because he couldn't focus. The good life he actually had was slipping away while he mourned the imaginary life he might have had. One day, Tanaka was so exhausted that he fell asleep in his shop during the middle of the afternoon. A traveling monk came in looking for thread and found Tanaka slumped over his counter, dark circles under his eyes. The monk woke him gently. Tanaka apologized and gathered the thread the monk needed. As the monk paid, he looked at Tanaka with concern. "Forgive me for saying so, but you look like a man being chased by demons." Tanaka felt tears come to his eyes. The kindness in the monk's voice opened something in him. "I made a terrible mistake 6 months ago," he said. "I can't stop thinking about it. It's destroying my sleep, my peace, everything." The monk nodded slowly. "Can you show me this mistake? Where is it right now?" Tanaka looked confused. "What do you mean?" "It happened 6 months ago." "Yes," the monk said. 6 months ago. So where is it now?" "It's in my mind. I remember it every day." "Ah," the monk said. "So it exists in your thoughts. Not in this moment. Not in this room. Only in your memory." Tanaka started to protest. "But the consequences are real. I have less money than I could have had." The monk smiled. "Today you have the money you have. Today you have your shop, your health, your family. These are the only real things. The money you might have had exists nowhere except in imagination. Yet you're trading your real life for an imaginary one." Tanaka sat down heavily. He had never thought of it this way. The monk continued, his voice gentle. "Every moment is new. This moment right now has never existed before. The sun is setting in a way it never has before. Your breath right now is completely fresh. But you're not experiencing any of it because you're trying to live in a moment that ended 6 months ago." "But how do I stop remembering?" Tanaka asked. "The memory comes on its own." "You don't stop it from coming," the monk said. "You just don't invite it to stay. When yesterday knocks on today's door, you can acknowledge it and let it pass. You don't have to serve it tea and ask it to sit down." That night, when Tanaka lay down to sleep, the familiar thoughts came. The regret, the replaying, the what-ifs. But this time, he tried something different. Instead of fighting the thoughts or believing them completely, he noticed them the way the monk had taught him. "This is a thought about something that ended 6 months ago," he said to himself. "Right now, I'm lying in bed. I'm breathing. My wife is beside me. The room is cool. These are the only real things." The thoughts didn't disappear. They came back again and again. But each time, Tanaka gently returned his attention to what was actually happening in the present moment. His breath, the feeling of the mattress beneath him, the sound of wind outside. Slowly, gradually, he felt his body relax. His mind was still making thoughts about the past, but he wasn't climbing into those thoughts and living there. He was here, in his bed, in this moment. And in this moment, there was actually nothing wrong. For the first time in 6 months, Tanaka slept deeply. Hakuin finished his tea and looked at Kai. Tanaka came to see me a year after meeting that monk. He wanted to thank me. You were the monk? Kai asked. Hakuin smiled. I was traveling through his town. I remember him well. He looked like a different man when I saw him again. Lighter, more present. He told me the teaching about letting yesterday pass through had changed his whole life. Kai sat quietly, taking in the story. He recognized himself in Tanaka, always replaying old conversations, old mistakes, old moments he wished he could change. The past is like a visitor that comes knocking, Hakuin said. You can acknowledge it politely. You don't have to slam the door on it. But you also don't have to invite it in and let it take over your house. The next morning, Kai helped Hakuin in the garden. The work was simple. Pulling weeds, watering plants, tying up vines that were growing tall. At first, Kai's mind wandered everywhere. Thinking about the journey ahead, wondering if he'd find what he was looking for, replaying conversations from his village. But then he noticed Hakuin beside him. The old master was completely absorbed in tying a tomato plant to its stake. His hands were steady and gentle. His face was calm. He wasn't thinking about anything else. He was just here, with this plant, in this moment. Kai tried to do the same. He brought his attention to the weed in his hand, the way its roots clung to the soil, the smell of earth. When his mind wandered to yesterday or tomorrow, he noticed it and came back to the garden, to the sun on his shoulders, to the feeling of dirt under his fingernails. It was hard at first. His mind kept running away, but each time he gently brought it back. And gradually, something shifted. The garden became vivid. The colors seemed brighter, the sounds clearer. He was actually here for the first time in years. After an hour of working this way, Kai felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. A kind of settling. Not exactly peace, but the beginning of it. A quietness that came from being fully present to what he was doing. That afternoon, Hakuin told Kai another story. There was once a young monk named Saro who lived at a monastery in the mountains. The monastery followed a strict schedule. Wake at dawn, meditation, breakfast, work, study, more meditation, dinner, sleep. Every day the same. Saro had been at the monastery for 3 years. He knew all the routines. He had memorized many teachings. He could sit in meditation for an hour without moving. By all external measures, he was a good student. But inside, Saro felt restless. He had heard stories about enlightenment, about moments of profound realization where everything became clear. He wanted that experience. He worked hard in his practice, always trying to reach some special state. During meditation, instead of simply sitting, Saro was constantly checking his progress. Am I getting more peaceful? Is this what enlightenment feels like? Why hasn't anything special happened yet? His meditation was full of striving and measuring. During meals, he ate while thinking about the next meditation session. During work, he thought about what teaching he would study later. He was never fully engaged with what was actually happening. One day, the monastery received a visit from a very old master named Hui. Master Hui was known for his simple, direct way of teaching. He agreed to meet with students who had questions. Saro was excited for his chance to speak with such a renowned teacher. He prepared questions in advance. Deep questions about the nature of mind, about reaching enlightenment, about advanced meditation techniques. When his turn came, Saro bowed before Master Hui and began asking his carefully prepared questions. But the old master held up a hand to stop him. "First," Master Hui said, "drink this tea." He handed Saro a cup of tea. Saro took it and started to drink while waiting for the master to answer his questions. But again, Master Hui interrupted. "No," the old master said. "Drink the tea." Saro didn't understand. "I am drinking it, master." "You're pouring tea into your mouth while your mind asks questions," Hui said. "I asked you to drink tea." Saro paused. He looked at the cup in his hands. He brought it to his lips and took a sip, this time paying attention to the actual experience. The warmth of the cup, the taste of the tea, slightly bitter, slightly sweet, the feeling of the liquid moving down his throat. He took another sip, fully present to the simple act of drinking. And something happened. For just a moment, there was no sorrow trying to reach enlightenment. There was just drinking. Just the experience itself, without someone standing apart from it, measuring it, wanting it to be different. When he finished the tea, Saro looked up at Master Hui with new eyes. The old master smiled. "All your questions were about someday. About becoming something you're not yet. About reaching some future state. But the tea was here. The drinking was here. You almost missed it completely." "I think I've been missing everything," Saro said quietly. "Yes," Hui said with compassion. "But now you notice. That's the beginning. Life is not happening in some future moment of enlightenment. It's happening right now in each ordinary action. When you eat, eat. When you walk, walk. When you drink tea, drink tea. This is the whole teaching." Saro bowed deeply. The old master had given him the answer to every question he'd prepared, though in a way he never expected. From that day forward, Saro's practice changed completely. He stopped trying to reach some special state and started simply being present to whatever he was doing. When he sat in meditation, he just sat without checking his progress. When he ate, he just ate, tasting his food. When he worked in the garden, he just worked, feeling the tools in his hands and the sun on his back. And gradually, naturally, without striving for it, a deep peace began to grow in him. Not because he had reached some advanced state, but because he had stopped abandoning the present moment in search of a better one. Hakuin looked at Kai. This is what Zen Buddhism teaches us. Not complicated philosophy, but simple presence. The peace you're looking for isn't in some distant place or future moment. It's available right here when you stop running away from now. Kai nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand. But Master Hakuin, my mind is so used to wandering. How do I practice this? The same way you practiced anything else, Hakuin said. with patience and gentleness. Every time you notice your mind has traveled away, you simply come back. No judgment, no criticism, just returning again and again to this moment. He stood up and walked to the doorway of the temple. "Come here." Kai joined him. They stood together looking out at the garden, at the mountains beyond, at the sky beginning to fill with the colors of sunset. "What do you hear?" Hakuin asked. Kai listened. Wind in the trees, a bird calling, the sound of water from the stream. "What do you feel?" "The air is cooling. There's a slight breeze on my face." "What do you see?" "The sky is turning orange and pink. The shadows are getting longer." "And where are you?" "I'm here," Kai said. "Right here." "Yes," Hakuin said. "This is where life happens. Not in yesterday or tomorrow. Here. When you can rest in this simple here-ness, peace comes naturally." They stood in silence for a while, just being present together. Kai noticed something had shifted in him. The constant urgency had quieted. The need to be somewhere else, to fix something, to figure something out had eased. Just for this moment, he was enough. Here was enough. That evening, Hakuin gave Kai one more teaching. "Tomorrow you'll continue your journey. You'll meet other teachers. Each one will show you something important. But remember this first lesson. The present moment is your foundation. Without this, nothing else matters." "What should I do when my mind wanders?" Kai asked. "Just notice," Hakuin said. "Notice where your thoughts have gone and gently return. Like training a puppy. You don't punish it for wandering. You just bring it back again and again with patience." Kai slept better that night than he had in months. His mind still produced thoughts about the past and future, but he didn't climb into them the way he usually did. He let them pass through like clouds passing through the sky. In the morning, before Kai left, Hakuin walked him to the edge of the temple grounds. "The next teacher you need is by the river, 2 days' walk south. Master Soen. He understands something about letting go that you need to learn." Kai bowed deeply to Hakuin. "Thank you for showing me how to be here." "You always knew," Hakuin said with a gentle smile. "I just reminded you. Now go and keep practicing presence. It's the foundation of everything in Zen Buddhism. When you're here, peace is here. They're the same thing." Kai set off down the road, his pack on his back, but something was different. He wasn't racing ahead in his mind anymore. He was walking, just walking, feeling his feet on the ground, seeing the trees on either side of the path, breathing the cool morning air. For the first time in years, he wasn't somewhere else. He was exactly where he was. And in that simple being here, there was something like peace beginning to grow. The road south from Hakuin's temple led through a valley where a wide river flowed. Kai could hear the water long before he saw it, a constant rushing sound that filled the air. After 2 days of walking, practicing presence the way Hakuin had taught him, Kai's feet brought him to the riverbank. The river was broad and moved quickly, carrying branches and leaves downstream. The water was clear enough that Kai could see smooth stones on the bottom. Willow trees grew along the banks, their long branches trailing in the current. Kai saw a figure sitting on a large flat rock near the water's edge. It was an older man, thin and grey-haired, wearing simple brown robes. He sat perfectly still, watching the river flow past. He didn't seem to be meditating exactly. He was just watching, his attention completely absorbed in the movement of the water. Kai approached quietly and waited. After a few moments, the man turned and looked at him with calm eyes. "You must be Kai," the man said. "Hakuin sent word you were coming. I'm Soen." "How did he send word?" Kai asked, surprised. "I only left his temple 2 days ago." Soen smiled. "Hakuin has his ways. Sit down. Watch the river with me." Kai set down his pack and sat on the rock beside Soen. Together they watched the water flow past. Leaves floated by, sometimes catching on rocks, sometimes swirling in small eddies, but always eventually moving downstream. A branch came by, and Kai watched it travel from upstream to downstream, getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared around a bend. "Everything flows," Soen said after a long silence. "The river never holds on to anything. It lets everything pass through. This is its nature." Kai nodded, not sure what to say. "But people aren't like rivers," Soen continued. "People grab onto things. We clutch them tightly. We try to stop the flow. Then we wonder why we suffer." He picked up a small stone and tossed it into the water. It made a splash and disappeared. "Gone," he said simply. "That's how everything is. Here for a moment, then gone. Yet, we spend our lives trying to make temporary things permanent." Kai thought about this. He thought about all the things he held onto tightly in his mind. Old arguments, old wounds, plans for the future, ideas about how things should be. His grip on all of it was so tight, his mental hands were cramped. "What are you holding on to right now?" Soen asked, as if he could read Kai's thoughts. "I don't know," Kai said. "Everything, I think." "Tell me about your life in the village," Soen said. "What did you do there?" "I worked in my family's grain shop," Kai said. "It was supposed to be mine someday. My father built it, and I was supposed to take over. But I left." "Do you feel guilty about leaving?" Kai paused. Yes, he realized. He felt guilty. My father worked hard to build that shop. It was supposed to be my future, my identity. I was supposed to be the son who carried on the family business. But I couldn't do it anymore. Not without sleep. Not without peace. "So you're holding on to an idea of who you were supposed to be," Soen observed. "And feeling guilty for not being that person." "I suppose so. That identity, the grain shop owner, the good son who takes over the family business. Where is that person now?" "I left him behind, I guess." "Did you?" Soen asked. "Or are you still carrying him with you, making him heavy?" Kai saw what Soen meant. He had left the village, but he was still holding tightly to the story of who he should have been. Still feeling guilty for not being that person. The identity was following him everywhere, weighing him down. "Let me tell you about someone I met years ago," Soen said, settling back against the rock. "There was a woman named Chio who lived in the capital city. She came from a wealthy family and married into another wealthy family. Her life was filled with beautiful things. Fine silk robes, delicate tea sets, paintings by famous artists, jewelry passed down through generations. Her home was like a museum. Chiyo took great pride in her possessions. She spent hours arranging them, caring for them, showing them to guests. Each object represented something to her. Status, taste, family heritage, her place in society. She knew exactly what everything was worth. She had lists and records of every valuable thing she owned. But Chiyo wasn't happy. She worried constantly about her possessions. What if something was stolen? What if something broke? What if a fire started? She had trouble sleeping because she would lie awake thinking about all the things that could go wrong. She hired guards. She bought special locks. She checked on everything multiple times a day. Her husband grew frustrated with her constant worry. Her children learned not to play freely in the house because they might break something valuable. Guests stopped visiting because Chiyo made them nervous with her anxious hovering over her things. One night, the thing Chiyo feared most happened. A fire started in the kitchen. It spread quickly through the old wooden house. Chiyo and her family escaped safely, but they could only watch as the fire consumed everything. The silk robes, the tea sets, the paintings, the jewelry, all of it gone in a few hours. Chiyo stood in the street, watching her house burn, and something unexpected happened. Instead of the devastating grief she had always imagined she would feel, she felt something else. Something like relief. All those things she had spent years protecting were gone. She no longer had to worry about them. She no longer had to guard them, inventory them, fret over them. The burden she had been carrying without realizing it was finally lifted. When the fire died down and only smoking ruins remained, Chiyo turned to her husband and said something that surprised him. "I feel lighter than I have in 20 years. They rebuilt, of course. They had some money saved. But this time, Chiyo lived differently. She bought simple things, practical things. When something broke, she replaced it without much thought. When something was lost, she let it go. She no longer built her identity around her possessions. People who had known Chiyo before and after the fire said she seemed like a different person. The worry lines in her face smoothed out. She laughed more easily. She welcomed guests without anxiety. Her children played freely in the new house. But didn't she lose everything? One neighbor asked. How can she be happier now than before? Chiyo heard this question and answered it herself. I lost things, she said. But I gained freedom. I was so busy holding on to objects that I forgot to hold on to life itself. The fire took my possessions, but it gave me back my peace. Years later, someone asked Chiyo if she ever missed the beautiful things she had owned. Sometimes I remember them fondly, she said. The way you remember a pleasant dream. But I don't miss carrying their weight. I don't miss being their servant. Things are meant to flow through our lives, not anchor us in place. Soen looked at Kai. Chiyo learned what the river already knows. You can't hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more it escapes. But if you cup your hands gently, water can rest there for a moment before flowing on. Kai watched the river, thinking about this. But we need some things, he said. We can't just let everything go. There's a difference between using things and being used by them, Soen replied. Between appreciating what you have and needing to possess it permanently. The river uses these stones to shape its course, but it doesn't try to own them. He stood up and stretched. Come, let's walk along the bank. They walked slowly beside the river, not talking for a while. Kai noticed how the water was always moving, but never gone. It flowed past, but more water always came. Nothing stayed, but the river remained. What else are you holding on to? Soen asked. Kai thought about it. I'm holding on to the idea that I need to be fixed, he admitted. That something is wrong with me because I can't sleep, because I can't stop worrying. I'm holding on to that story about myself. Ah, Soen nodded. The identity of the broken person who needs to be healed, that's a heavy one to carry. But isn't that why I'm here? To fix what's wrong with me? Is the river broken because it flows instead of standing still? Soen asked. Is the wind broken because it moves instead of being solid? You're not broken, Kai. You're just holding too tightly to things that want to flow. They came to a place where the river widened into a calm pool before continuing downstream. The water here was so still and clear that it reflected the sky perfectly. Trees growing on the bank were mirrored in the surface. Sit here, Soen said, settling down on the grass. Let me tell you about a student I had once. His name was Jiro, and he came to study meditation with me about 10 years ago. Jiro was dedicated and sincere. He practiced every day with real commitment. And one day during meditation, he had an extraordinary experience. He described it as a feeling of complete peace and unity with everything. The boundary between himself and the world dissolved. Time seemed to stop. He felt connected to all things, wrapped in a profound silence that was also somehow alive and vibrant. It lasted perhaps 10 minutes, and when it ended, Jiro felt like he had touched something sacred. Naturally, Jiro wanted to experience it again. The next day, he sat in meditation with that intention. He tried to recreate the conditions that had led to the experience. He sat in the same place, at the same time, in the same posture. He tried to remember what he had been thinking just before the experience happened. But the experience didn't come back. Jiro tried again the next day. And the next. Days became weeks. He became frustrated. Then desperate. Then angry. His meditation, which had once been peaceful and natural, became tense and forced. He was straining, pushing, trying to make something happen. He came to me upset. Master Soen, I had such a beautiful experience, and now it's gone. How do I get it back? Why do you need it back? I asked him. Because it was wonderful. It was what I've been seeking. It was the answer. The answer to what? Jiro paused. He realized he didn't actually know. The answer to everything, I suppose. It felt like truth. Like real peace. I nodded. And now? Now I feel worse than before. Because I know what's possible, but I can't reach it. I took him outside to this very pool. We sat right here, in fact. I asked him to watch the surface of the water. It was calm that day, perfectly reflecting the sky and trees. Very beautiful. Then I picked up a stone and tossed it into the center of the pool. The reflection shattered into ripples. Circles spread out across the water, disrupting the perfect mirror. Now the reflection is gone, I said to Jiro. Should we grieve for it? Should we try to bring it back? No, he said. The ripples will settle. The reflection will return on its own. Will it be the same reflection? Jiro thought about this. No. The clouds will have moved. The light will be different. It will be similar, but not identical. Exactly, I said. That perfect reflection wasn't something to possess. It was a moment in the river's flowing. Beautiful, yes, but meant to pass so the next moment could come. Jiro sat quietly, taking this in. I continued. Your experience in meditation was like that reflection. It arose from conditions. It was real and beautiful, but it was never meant to become permanent. By trying to hold on to it, you're like someone trying to freeze the river so the reflection won't change. You're fighting against the very flow that made the experience possible in the first place. So I should just forget about it? No, I said. You can appreciate that it happened. You can be grateful for it. But you can't possess it. It came, it taught you something, and it moved on. Now you practice with what's actually here, not what was here before or might be here again someday. Jiro understood, but the understanding took time to settle into his practice. For weeks, he still found himself occasionally reaching for that experience, hoping it would return. Each time he noticed himself doing this, he would remember the reflection in the pool and gently let go. Gradually, his meditation became natural again. Sometimes pleasant states arose, sometimes difficult ones. He learned to let them all flow through without grasping at the pleasant ones or pushing away the unpleasant ones. He became like the pool itself, allowing all reflections to appear and disappear without trying to make any of them permanent. A year later, Jiro had another profound experience during meditation. Different from the first one, but equally meaningful. When he told me about it, I asked him, "Will you try to hold on to this one?" He smiled. "No, Master. I'll let it flow through like everything else. I'm grateful it came, and I'm at peace with it leaving." That's when I knew he had truly learned the teaching. Soen stood up and brushed off his robes. The teaching of Zen Buddhism is not about collecting special experiences or achieving permanent states. It's about learning to live in harmony with the way things actually are. And the way things actually are is flowing, changing, impermanent. Kai felt something releasing in his chest. "I've been trying to hold on to so many things," he said. "Old versions of myself. Ideas about who I should be. Hoping for permanent solutions to my problems. Even trying to possess peace itself, like it's something I can grab and keep." "Yes," Soen said gently. "And that grasping is exhausting. It's one of the main reasons you can't sleep. Your hands are so full of things you're trying to hold that you can't relax." "How do I practice letting go?" Kai asked. Soen pointed to the river. "Watch. The water doesn't practice letting go. It simply doesn't hold on in the first place. But for humans, it's different. We have to notice our grip first, then consciously relax it. Again and again." He picked up a handful of small pebbles and gave them to Kai. "Each time you notice yourself holding onto something mentally, imagine dropping a pebble into the river. Watch it sink and disappear. That's the practice. Not forcing yourself to let go, but gently allowing things to drop." Kai held the pebbles in his palm. He thought about the identity of the grain shop owner he was supposed to be. He pictured it in his mind, then dropped a pebble into the river. Plunk. Gone. He thought about an argument he had with his brother 2 years ago that he replayed constantly in his mind. Another pebble. Plunk. He thought about his need to be a person who had everything figured out. Plunk. With each pebble, Kai felt a small release. The holdings weren't completely gone, but the grip loosened slightly. It was a start. That evening, Soen invited Kai to stay at his small hut by the river. They ate simple food and listened to the water flowing in the darkness. Before sleep, Soen gave Kai one more teaching. When you lie down tonight, Soen said, notice what thoughts come. Notice if any of them are things you're holding on to. Past conversations, future worries, identities, needs. Just notice them without judgment. And then, if you can, imagine them floating downstream like leaves on the river. You don't have to force them away. Just stop holding them in place. Kai tried this that night. His mind produced its usual parade of thoughts. But instead of engaging with each one, instead of climbing into them and living there, he imagined them as leaves floating on dark water. Some caught on rocks for a while. Some swirled in eddies, but eventually they all flowed away. He didn't fall asleep immediately, but the quality of his resting was different. Lighter, less exhausting. He wasn't fighting the thoughts or trying to solve everything before allowing himself to rest. He was just watching the flow. In the morning, Kai helped Soen with simple tasks. They mended a fishing net. They gathered firewood. They sat by the river again, watching the endless movement of water that was somehow always the same river, even though nothing in it stayed still. There's something else I should tell you, Soen said as Kai prepared to continue his journey. Letting go doesn't mean not caring. The river doesn't become empty because it lets everything flow through. It's full, always full. Letting go creates space for what's actually here. Kai nodded, understanding this in his body now, not just his mind. Your next teacher is Master Dogen, Soen said. He lives 3 days north up in the mountains. He understands something about emptiness that will help you. But don't expect him to teach the way Hakuin and I have taught. Dogen shows truth through silence and simplicity. Thank you, Kai said, bowing deeply to Soen. Thank you for showing me the river's wisdom. The river showed you, Soen replied with a smile. I just sat here and watched it with you. This is the way of Zen Buddhism. The teachings are all around us, in flowing water and falling leaves and changing seasons. We just need to pay attention. Kai shouldered his pack and set off north toward the mountains. As he walked, he practiced what he had learned. When thoughts came, he imagined them floating downstream. When he noticed himself gripping tightly to some idea or identity, he consciously relaxed his mental hands. The practice wasn't perfect. Sometimes he forgot and got caught up in thoughts again. Sometimes he found himself clutching at things even after deciding to let them go. But each time he noticed, he gently returned to the practice of allowing, of releasing, of letting the river carry things away. And with each small release, there was more space for the peace that had been waiting underneath all the holding. Peace wasn't something he needed to create or achieve. It was what remained when he stopped clutching so tightly to everything else. The path into the mountains was steep and rocky. Kai's legs burned as he climbed higher and higher, leaving the river valley behind. The air grew thinner and cooler. Pine trees gave way to twisted mountain shrubs and bare rock. By the third day, Kai was walking through clouds that drifted across the path like silent travelers. He had been practicing what Soen taught him. When his legs ached and his mind complained about the difficulty of the climb, he imagined the complaints floating downstream like leaves. When worries about whether he would find Master Dogen's hermitage arose, he let them flow past. The practice was becoming more natural, though he still caught himself gripping tightly to thoughts many times each day. Late in the afternoon of the third day, Kai rounded a bend in the path and saw a small stone hut built into the mountainside. It was so simple it was almost invisible, made from the same grey stone as the mountain itself. There was no garden, no decoration, nothing extra. Just a hut, a door, and a small window. Smoke rose from a hole in the roof. Kai approached and called out a greeting. No answer came. He waited, then called again. Still nothing. He sat down on a flat rock near the door to wait, watching clouds move across the valley below. After some time, the door opened. An old man stepped out, very thin, with a shaved head and robes that had been mended many times. His face was deeply lined, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He looked at Kai without speaking. "Master Dogen?" Kai asked. The old man nodded once. "Master Soen sent me to learn from you. About emptiness," he said. Dogen studied Kai for a long moment, then gestured for him to come inside. The interior of the hut was as simple as the exterior. There was a sleeping mat, a small fire pit, one pot, one bowl, one cup. Nothing else. No books, no cushions, no decorations. The walls were bare stone. The floor was packed earth. It was the emptiest space Kai had ever seen someone live in. Dogen sat down by the fire and poured tea into his single cup. He drank, then rinsed the cup and poured tea for Kai. They sat in silence while Kai drank. The tea was bitter and plain, but warm. "Tell me," Dogen finally said, his voice rough from disuse, "who are you?" "My name is Kai. I come from a village south of here. I worked in my family's grain shop before I left to find peace." "No," Dogen said. "Who are you?" Kai wasn't sure how to answer. "I'm a traveler seeking wisdom?" "No." "I'm someone who can't sleep?" "No." "I'm the son of a grain merchant?" "No." Kai felt frustrated. "I don't understand what you're asking." Dogen leaned forward slightly. "All the things you just said are stories. Roles. Labels. Descriptions. But who is the one aware of those stories? Who is noticing the frustration you feel right now?" Kai paused. He had never thought about this before. There was awareness happening. Someone or something was experiencing this moment. But when he tried to grasp who or what that was, it slipped away like water. "I don't know," he admitted. "Good," Dogen said. "Not knowing is the beginning." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountain mist. Most people spend their whole lives thinking they know who they are. They collect identities like a merchant collects goods. I am this. I am that. They build a solid story about themselves and defend it against anything that threatens it. But they've never actually looked at who they really are underneath all those stories. Kai thought about the identities he had been carrying. The grain shop owner, the son who disappointed his father, the broken person who needed to be fixed, the seeker looking for wisdom. Were any of these who he really was? Everything you think you are is like smoke, Dogen continued. It seems solid from a distance, but when you reach for it, there's nothing to grab. This is what Zen Buddhism means by emptiness. Not that you don't exist, but that you don't exist in the fixed, solid way you imagine. He returned to the fire and sat down. Let me tell you about a scholar I met many years ago. His name was Fumio, and he was one of the most respected intellectuals in the capital. He had studied with the greatest teachers. He had read thousands of books. He could discuss philosophy, poetry, history, and religion with remarkable depth. People came from distant provinces to hear his lectures. Fumio knew that he was intelligent. This was not arrogance, but simple fact. His mind was sharp, his memory was excellent, his understanding was deep. He had worked hard to cultivate his intellect, and he was proud of what he had achieved. His identity as a brilliant scholar was the foundation of his life. Then, in his 53rd year, Fumio suffered a strange illness. A fever burned through him for days. When it finally broke, something had changed. His memory was damaged. He could no longer recall many of the texts he had memorized. Complex ideas that once came easily now confused him. His famous sharp mind felt dull and slow. At first, Fumio thought the damage was temporary. He worked hard to recover his abilities. He reread books, practiced memorization, forced his mind to work the way it used to. But months passed and the sharpness didn't return. His mind had been permanently changed by the illness. Fumio fell into despair. If he wasn't a brilliant scholar, who was he? His entire identity had been built on his intellect. Without it, he felt like he had ceased to exist. He stopped seeing students. He stopped accepting invitations to lecture. He withdrew from society and spent his days in bitter grief for the person he used to be. His wife became worried about him. One day, she convinced him to visit a monastery where a Zen master lived, hoping that spiritual practice might ease his suffering. Fumio was reluctant, but he agreed. When he arrived at the monastery, he was brought to meet the master. It was me, though I was younger then, newly established in this mountain hermitage. Fumio sat before me and poured out his story. He spoke about who he had been, what he had lost, how empty his life felt now. He wept as he talked, something he had never done before in front of anyone. When he finished, I asked him a simple question. This brilliant mind you lost, who was it that possessed that mind? Fumio looked confused. I did. It was my mind. And this slower mind you have now, who possesses this one? I do. So you remain, even though the mind has changed? Fumio paused. I suppose so. But I'm not the same person. Aren't you? Are you not still the one who sees, hears, feels? Are you not still the awareness that notices thoughts, whether those thoughts are brilliant or ordinary? Fumio had never considered this. He had been so identified with his mind's contents that he had never noticed the awareness that contained those contents. I continued. You built your entire identity on something that was always changing and temporary. Your sharp mind was not who you were. It was something you had for a time. Like a cloud formation that drifts across the sky and then changes shape. The sky remains unchanged, but you thought you were the cloud. Then who am I? Fumio asked. That question is the gateway, I told him. Not the answer to the question, but the question itself. When you ask, who am I? With genuine curiosity, without trying to grab onto any answer, you begin to discover what you really are. Fumio stayed at the monastery for 3 months. Each day he sat in meditation with that question. Who am I? Not trying to answer it intellectually, but letting the question work on him, dissolve his assumptions, open space in his understanding. Gradually, something shifted. Fumio began to notice that there was an awareness present that had nothing to do with being smart or not smart. This awareness was here before his brilliant mind developed. It was here after his mind changed. It would be here regardless of what happened to his body or thoughts. This awareness didn't need intelligence to exist. It didn't need achievement or recognition. It simply was, steady and unchanging beneath all the coming and going of mental states and life circumstances. One morning during meditation, Fumio suddenly laughed out loud. Other monks looked at him in surprise, but he couldn't stop laughing. He had spent 53 years defending and polishing an identity that had never really existed. He had built an entire life around protecting something as insubstantial as morning mist. And now that it was gone, he saw that nothing essential had been lost at all. When I spoke with him afterward, Fumio said something I never forgot. I grieved for months over losing my brilliant mind. But I never had it in the first place. It was just a temporary condition like weather. I mistook the weather for the sky itself. After that, Fumio returned home, but he was a completely different person. He still taught occasionally, sharing what understanding he had, whether brilliant or ordinary. But he was no longer attached to being seen as intelligent. He had discovered something more fundamental than any mental ability. His students noticed that his teaching had actually become more effective. Before, he had impressed people with his intellect. Now, he connected with them from a place of simple presence. He was no longer defending an identity, so he could meet people where they actually were. Dogen finished the story and looked at Kai. Fumio discovered what Zen Buddhism has been teaching for centuries. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your body. You are not your roles or achievements. All of these things come and go, change and dissolve. But something remains, witnessing all of it. Kai felt something opening in his chest, a kind of spaciousness he had never noticed before. But if I'm not all those things, what am I? That's the beautiful mystery, Dogen said. The moment you try to define it, you've missed it. The moment you think you've grasped it, it slips away. This is what we mean by emptiness. Not that you're nothing, but that you're nothing that can be captured in a concept or label. He gestured around the bare hut. This is why I live with so little. Every possession wants to tell me who I am. Every book says, you are a scholar. Every decoration says you are a person with certain tastes. Every comfort says you are a body that needs to be pleased. I emptied my life so I could discover what remains when all the definitions are stripped away. And what remains? Kai asked. Dogen smiled, a rare expression on his austere face. You tell me. Look right now. Not at your thoughts about this moment, but at the awareness that's noticing those thoughts. What is that? Kai looked inward, or tried to. He noticed thoughts arising. He noticed sensations in his body. He noticed feelings moving through him. But when he tried to find the one doing the noticing, there was nothing solid to grab onto. Just a kind of open awareness, spacious and clear, that seemed to have no boundary or center. It's like trying to see my own eyes, Kai said. Yes, Dogen nodded. The awareness you're looking for is what's doing the looking. You can't see it because you are it. Or more accurately, it's not a separate thing at all. It's the space in which everything appears. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. Wind moved around the stone walls of the hut. Clouds passed by the window. And through it all, there was this open awareness, witnessing everything without being changed by any of it. Let me tell you one more story, Dogen said, about a student who came to me seeking the same thing you're seeking. Her name was Akiko, and she arrived at this hermitage 5 years ago. She was in terrible distress. Her husband had died suddenly, and she felt like she had lost herself along with him. For 20 years, she had been someone's wife. That role had defined her daily life, her sense of purpose, her identity. Without it, she didn't know who she was anymore. Akiko wept when she told me this. I was always Kenzo's wife. I took care of him, managed the household, represented our family. That was who I was. Now he's gone, and I'm no one. I'm just empty. I let her cry for as long as she needed. Then I asked her, "Who is it that feels empty?" She looked at me through her tears. What? You say you're empty, you're no one. But who is aware of this emptiness? Who is experiencing this grief? Akiko had no answer. You see, I said gently, you think you've lost yourself because you've lost a role. But the role was never you. It was something you did, something you expressed through. The you that existed before you married Kenzo is still here. The you that exists now that he's gone is the same you that was here all along. But I don't feel like myself, she protested. Because you confused yourself with a role. It's like an actor who plays a part for so long they forget they're an actor. When the play ends, they think they've died. But they've only stopped playing that character. Akiko stayed with me for a month. Each day we sat in meditation together. I taught her to notice the awareness that was present beneath all her roles and identities. Mother, wife, daughter, friend, these were all masks she wore. Important masks, meaningful masks, but masks nonetheless. Underneath them all was something that had no name, no role, no fixed identity. This was frightening for Akiko at first. She had spent her whole life building and maintaining identities. The idea of existing without them felt like dissolving into nothing. But gradually, she began to understand that this emptiness wasn't a lack. It was freedom. One morning, Akiko came to me with a calm face. I understand now, she said. I'm not empty because I lost Kenzo. I'm empty because I always was empty. Empty of any fixed, permanent self. And this emptiness is not sad. It's spacious. It's free. Yes, I said. In Zen Buddhism, we call this emptiness. not empty like a container with nothing in it, but empty like the sky. The sky is empty of objects, but it's not nothing. It's the space in which all things appear. Birds fly through it, clouds drift across it, storms move through it. But the sky itself remains unchanged, empty and full at the same time. Akiko nodded slowly. I think I spent my whole life trying to be something solid, something permanent. But everything is always changing. The only permanent thing is this awareness that watches it all change. Even that awareness isn't separate from the change, I told her. It's not standing apart from life, watching it like a spectator. It's intimately woven into every moment, every experience. You are not separate from your life. You are the living itself. This was harder for Akiko to understand, and honestly, I couldn't explain it very well with words. It's something you have to discover directly, not through concepts. When Akiko left the hermitage, she was a different person. Not because she had gained something new, but because she had stopped trying to be something fixed. She returned to her village and lived simply, doing what needed to be done without building a solid identity around any of it. She helped neighbors, tended her small garden, and sat in meditation each morning. But she was no longer anyone in particular, just awareness, moving through life in a temporary form called Akiko. Dogen stood and added wood to the fire. This is what I want you to understand, Kai. You came here thinking you needed to fix yourself, to become someone who can sleep peacefully. But there's no fixed self that needs fixing. You're more like a river than a rock. Always flowing, always changing. The suffering comes from trying to be a rock, trying to be solid and permanent when your nature is fluid and temporary. Kai felt something profound shifting in his understanding. All his life, he had been trying to become someone successful, someone good, someone peaceful, someone who had it all figured out. But maybe he didn't need to become anyone. Maybe he already was awareness itself, temporary, appearing in the form called Kai. When you lie down at night, Dogen continued, you think I need to sleep. But who is this I? If you look closely, you can't find it. There are thoughts about sleeping. There are sensations in the body. There are feelings of tiredness or restlessness. But where is the separate I that's experiencing all this? Kai tried to find it. But just like before, there was nothing solid to grab onto. Just awareness, open and spacious, in which all experiences arose and passed away. The mind trying to sleep actually prevents sleep, Dogen said. Because there's a sense of someone doing something, achieving something. But sleep happens naturally when you stop being someone who needs to sleep. When you just rest in the awareness that's already at peace. That night, Kai slept in Dogen's hut. The master gave him the sleeping mat while Dogen sat by the fire in meditation. Before lying down, Kai tried the practice Dogen had taught him. Instead of thinking, I need to fall asleep, he simply rested in awareness itself. Not Kai who needs something, but awareness in which tiredness and rest were appearing. It was strange at first. His mind kept creating a sense of self, an I who was trying to do the practice correctly. But each time he noticed this happening, he gently released it. Not trying to get rid of the self, but seeing through its apparent solidity. And something remarkable happened. Without a solid self trying to sleep, sleep came naturally. His body knew what to do. His nervous system knew how to rest. When he stopped interfering with I thoughts and self-concepts, the natural intelligence of his organism took over. He didn't sleep perfectly. Old patterns still arose. But there was a new quality to his rest, a lightness that came from not taking himself so seriously. In the morning, Dogen gave Kai tea, and they sat together in silence as the sun rose over the mountains. Finally, Dogen spoke. There are more teachers for you to meet, more wisdom to discover. But remember this teaching about emptiness. You are not a solid thing that needs to be fixed or improved. You are more like space in which everything appears. Clouds may pass through you, thoughts and feelings and sensations. But you are the space, not the clouds. Where should I go next? Kai asked. Down from the mountains, Dogen said. Back to where people live and work. Master Bankei has a temple in a busy market town 3 days east. He will show you something about accepting what is, even in the midst of chaos and difficulty. Soen taught you to let things flow. I've shown you that there's no solid self to hold on to them anyway. Bankei will teach you how to be at peace even when life is messy and imperfect. Kai bowed deeply to Dogen. Thank you for showing me emptiness. I showed you nothing, Dogen replied with a hint of a smile. I just pointed at what was always here. This is the way of Zen Buddhism. We don't give you something new. We help you see what you've been overlooking. As Kai descended from the mountains, he practiced resting in the awareness Dogen had pointed to. Not Kai walking down a path, but awareness in which walking was happening. Not Kai having thoughts, but awareness in which thoughts were appearing and disappearing like clouds. The practice kept slipping. His mind kept creating a sense of solid self. But each time he noticed, he smiled at the magic trick his mind was performing. Creating something out of nothing, then believing it was real. And in the noticing, there was a lightness, a freedom from taking himself so seriously. He was no one in particular, going nowhere special, just walking down a mountain path on a cool morning. And in that no-oneness, there was a peace more stable than any identity could provide. The walk west from the market town took Kai through gentle countryside. Rice fields stretched out on either side of the road, bright green and peaceful. Farmers worked in the distance, tiny figures against the landscape. The day was warm, and Kai found himself walking slowly, noticing details he might have missed before. A butterfly landing on a flower. The sound of water moving through irrigation channels. The way clouds changed shape as they drifted across the sky. He was practicing what he had learned. Being present like Hakuin taught. Letting thoughts flow through like Soen's river. Resting in awareness as Dogen showed him. Accepting what is as Bankei demonstrated. The teachings were starting to weave together, each one supporting the others. But Kai also noticed something else. Even as he practiced these teachings, a harsh voice in his mind kept commenting, "You're not doing it right. You just got distracted. You're walking too slowly. You should understand this better by now." The voice was constant, critical, never satisfied. He had carried this voice his whole life, so familiar he barely noticed it most of the time. But now, after learning to be more aware, he heard it clearly. And he realized how cruel it was. He would never speak to another person the way he spoke to himself. By late afternoon, Kai reached the temple Bankei had described. It was smaller than the others, set in a grove of bamboo that whispered in the breeze. The temple looked well loved, with flowers growing in neat beds and a small vegetable garden on one side. An older man was working in the garden, gently tying up tomato plants. He had a kind face, deeply lined with years, and he moved with careful attention to each plant. When he saw Kai approaching, he stood up and smiled warmly. "You must be Kai. Welcome. I'm Ijo." His voice was soft and gentle. "You look tired from your journey. Come, sit in the shade and have some tea." Eho led Kai to a bench under the bamboo and brought out tea and rice cakes. They sat quietly for a while, just resting together. Kai noticed that being near Ijo felt comfortable, like sitting with an old friend who accepted you completely. "Bankei sent word that you've been learning well," Ijo said. "But he also mentioned you might be a bit hard on yourself." Kai felt embarrassed. "I suppose I am. I keep noticing all the ways I'm not getting it right. How my mind still wanders. How I still feel anxious sometimes. I've been learning from these great teachers, but I still feel like I'm failing." Ijo nodded with understanding. "Tell me, if a friend came to you and said they were trying to learn something difficult and they were struggling with it, what would you say to them?" "I would tell them it's okay to struggle," Kai said. "That learning takes time. That mistakes are part of the process." "And what do you say to yourself when you struggle?" Kai paused. "I tell myself I should be better by now. That I'm not trying hard enough. That something is wrong with me." "I see," Ijo said gently. "So you offer your friends kindness and yourself harshness. Why is that?" "I don't know," Kai admitted. "I suppose I think being hard on myself will make me improve faster." "And does it work?" Kai thought about this honestly. "No. It just makes me feel worse. And when I feel worse, I struggle even more." Ijo smiled. "You've just discovered something important. Let me tell you about a student I had some years ago. His name was Daichi, and he came to study at this temple when he was quite young, maybe 20 years old. Daichi was earnest and sincere. He wanted very much to be a good student and to understand the teachings of Zen Buddhism. But Daichi had a problem. He made mistakes often. During meditation, he would fall asleep. During work periods, he would forget instructions and do tasks wrong. During study, he would misunderstand concepts. Nothing terrible, just the normal mistakes that all students make while learning. But Daichi couldn't forgive himself for these mistakes. Every time he made an error, he would criticize himself harshly. "You're so stupid. Why can't you get this right? Everyone else understands better than you. You're wasting the master's time." The other students actually made just as many mistakes as Daichi, but they were gentler with themselves. They would laugh at their errors, try again, and move on. But Daichi would dwell on each mistake for days, replaying it, feeling ashamed, convincing himself he was a failure. This harsh self-criticism was making Daichi miserable. It was also making him a worse student. Because he was so afraid of making mistakes, he became tense and anxious. And tension and anxiety made mistakes more likely. So he was caught in a difficult cycle. One day, Daichi fell asleep during meditation again. When the session ended, he was so ashamed that he went to hide in the garden behind the temple. He sat there criticizing himself, feeling terrible. I found him there and sat down beside him. "Difficult meditation?" I asked. "I fell asleep again," Daichi said miserably. "I'm such a bad student. I can't do anything right." "Tell me," I said, "if one of the other students fell asleep during meditation, what would you think of them?" "I would think it's okay," Daichi said. "Everyone gets tired sometimes." "But when you fall asleep, you think you're a bad student?" "Yes." "So the same action means different things depending on who does it?" Daichi looked confused. "I suppose so." I picked a small flower that was growing nearby. "Look at this flower. It's a bit wilted. One petal is torn. It's not perfect. Is it a bad flower?" "No, it's just a flower." "But if you were a flower with a torn petal, would you be a bad flower?" Daichi started to understand what I was showing him. "That doesn't make sense when you put it that way." "No, it doesn't," I agreed. "But this is what you do. You have one standard for everyone else and a much harsher standard for yourself. You see others with compassion, but you see yourself only with judgment." I handed him the flower. "This flower doesn't criticize itself for having a torn petal. It just continues being a flower, growing as best it can. You could learn from it." Over the following weeks, I gave Daichi a practice. Every time he noticed the harsh, critical voice in his mind, he was to ask himself, would I say this to a friend I cared about? If the answer was no, he was to try saying something kinder instead. This was harder than it sounds. Daichi's habit of self-criticism was deeply ingrained. The harsh voice would arise automatically, and he had to actively choose to respond differently. But gradually, something began to change. When he fell asleep in meditation, instead of thinking, "You're so stupid," he would catch himself and think, "I'm tired today. That's okay. I'll try to sleep better tonight." When he made a mistake in his work, instead of dwelling on it for days, he would think, "Everyone makes mistakes while learning. I'll do better next time." The change in Daichi was remarkable. As he became gentler with himself, he became more relaxed. And being more relaxed, he actually made fewer mistakes. His meditation improved. His work improved. His understanding of the teachings deepened. But more than that, he became happier. The constant background noise of self-criticism had been exhausting him, draining his energy and joy. When he learned to speak to himself with kindness, it was like putting down a heavy burden he didn't know he was carrying. One day, about 6 months after our conversation in the garden, Daichi came to me with a bright face. "Master Ijo," he said, "I just realized something. All this time I thought being harsh with myself was helping me improve. But actually, it was holding me back. Now that I'm kinder to myself, I'm learning faster and enjoying the practice more." "Yes," I said, pleased by his discovery. Harshness creates fear and tension. Kindness creates safety and openness. Which do you think is better soil for growth? Daichi stayed at the temple for several more years, and he became one of my finest students. Not because he was perfect or never made mistakes, but because he had learned to meet himself with the same compassion he naturally felt for others. When he eventually left to teach on his own, students were drawn to his gentle presence. They felt safe making mistakes around him because he never judged them harshly. What they didn't know was that he had learned this gentleness first by practicing it on himself. Ijo finished his tea and looked at Kai. "This is what I want to teach you. You've learned so much already about presence and letting go and acceptance. But without self-compassion, these teachings can become just another way to be hard on yourself. I should be more present. I should let go better. I should accept things more fully." More shoulds that turn into weapons. Kai recognized this immediately. He had been doing exactly that, using the teachings as new reasons to criticize himself. In Zen Buddhism, Ejo continued, we talk a lot about letting go of the ego, not taking yourself so seriously. But some people misunderstand this. They think it means being harsh with yourself, treating yourself without care. But that's not it at all. You can hold yourself lightly without holding yourself harshly. He stood up and gestured for Kai to walk with him through the bamboo grove. The tall stalks swayed gently around them, creating patterns of light and shadow. "Let me tell you about someone else who learned this teaching," Ijo said. "There was a woman named Hana who lived in a village not far from here. She was known for being very kind to others. She helped neighbors when they were sick, gave food to those who had little, and always had a gentle word for people who were struggling. Everyone in the village thought of Hana as one of the kindest people they knew. But Hana had a secret. While she was gentle with everyone else, she was merciless with herself. She would lie awake at night thinking about all the ways she had failed during the day. She hadn't helped enough. She hadn't been kind enough. She had said something awkward to a neighbor and spent hours worrying about it. When Hana got sick with a mild fever, she felt guilty for resting. People need my help, she thought. I'm being lazy. When she forgot to bring food to an elderly neighbor one day, she couldn't forgive herself. What kind of person forgets? I'm so selfish. This constant self-criticism was exhausting her, but she didn't know how to stop. She thought this was just how she was supposed to be. High standards. Always improving. Never satisfied. One day, Hana was helping a young mother in the village. The mother had burned the rice while cooking, and she was near tears. I'm such a terrible mother, the young woman said. I can't even cook rice properly. Hana immediately comforted her. Everyone burns rice sometimes. It's just rice. You're a wonderful mother. Don't be so hard on yourself. As she said these words, something struck Hana. She would never speak to this young mother the way she spoke to herself. When others made small mistakes, she saw them as human and forgivable. But when she made the same mistakes, she saw them as evidence of deep personal failure. This realization troubled Hana so much that she came to this temple to speak with me. She told me about her harsh inner voice and asked if there was something wrong with her for being so critical. There's nothing wrong with you, I told her. You've simply learned to treat yourself like an enemy rather than a friend. This is common, but it's also something you can change. How? She asked. I gave her a simple practice. For the next week, every time you speak to yourself in your mind, imagine you're speaking to a dear friend. Would you say those words to someone you love? If not, try saying something different. Hana tried this practice, and it was eye-opening for her. She quickly realized how often she spoke to herself in ways she would never speak to anyone else. You're so stupid. You always mess things up. No one really likes you. She would never say such things to a friend, but she said them to herself constantly. At first, trying to speak differently felt fake. "I'm just lying to myself," she thought. But I encouraged her to continue. "It's not lying," I told her. "When you're harsh with yourself, you're not being truthful. You're being unfair. When you speak kindly to yourself, you're actually being more honest. You're seeing yourself the way you really are, a human being doing her best, not the monster your critical voice makes you out to be." Gradually, Hannah learned to catch the harsh words before they took root. When she made a small mistake, instead of calling herself stupid, she would think, "I'm learning." When she forgot something, instead of seeing it as proof of deep character flaws, she would think, "I'm human, and humans forget things sometimes." The change in Hannah's life was profound. She still helped her neighbors and was still kind to others. But now, she had energy left over for herself. She wasn't exhausted by the constant battle with her own mind. She found she could actually rest at night instead of lying awake in self-criticism. One day, several months after starting this practice, Hannah told me something interesting. "I thought being kind to myself would make me lazy or selfish. But actually, I'm a better helper now. When I'm not exhausted from fighting myself, I have more to give others." "Yes," I said. "Compassion isn't a limited resource. The more you have for yourself, the more you have for others. When you treat yourself like an enemy, it drains everyone around you. When you treat yourself like a friend, it nourishes everyone." Ijo and Kai had reached a small clearing in the bamboo grove where someone had placed a bench. They sat down together, listening to the gentle rustling of the bamboo in the breeze. "You see," Ijo said, "Zen Buddhism teaches us to see clearly, to not be attached to ego. But this doesn't mean being cruel to yourself. It means seeing yourself accurately, with both honesty and kindness. Yes, you make mistakes. Yes, you have habits and patterns. But you're also a human being who's trying to learn and grow. That deserves compassion, not contempt." Kai felt something loosening in his chest. He had been carrying such harshness toward himself for so long. "But how do I know if I'm being compassionate or just making excuses for myself?" "Good question," Ijo said. "Compassion is honest. It sees clearly what's happening without judgment. Making excuses is refusing to see clearly. If you lie awake worrying, compassion says, I notice my mind is very active right now. This is difficult. What do I need? Making excuses says, it's fine, there's no problem, when there clearly is one. He looked at Kai with gentle eyes. Right now, what do you notice when you think about yourself? Kai took a moment to check inward. I notice I'm tired. I notice I still feel some anxiety even after all this learning. I notice I'm judging myself for still feeling anxious. Good, Ijo said. You're seeing clearly. Now, what would compassion say to this? Kai thought about it. Compassion would say, it's okay to be tired after walking all day. It's okay to still have some anxiety. Old patterns take time to change. I'm doing my best. Yes, Ijo smiled. That's compassion. Not denying what's happening, but meeting it with kindness instead of harshness. They sat in the peaceful clearing for a while longer. Kai practiced noticing his thoughts without judgment. When the critical voice arose, saying he should be more enlightened by now, he gently responded, I'm learning. This is how learning looks. That evening, Ajo invited Kai to stay for dinner. They prepared a simple meal together, and Kai noticed how Ajo moved through the kitchen. When he dropped a knife, he simply picked it up. When he added too much salt to the soup, he just added more water. There was no self-criticism, no frustration. Just a gentle acceptance of mistakes as part of cooking. "You make it look easy," Kai said. "Being gentle with yourself." "It's a practice like anything else," Ajo replied. "I spent many years being harsh with myself too. But I learned that harshness only creates more suffering, and there's already enough suffering in the world without adding extra." After dinner, they sat by the fire. Ajo brought out tea and they drank in comfortable silence. Finally, Ajo spoke. "Tomorrow, you should return to your village," he said. Kai was surprised. "Really? I thought there were more teachers to meet." "There's one more teacher," Ajo said with a mysterious smile. "But this teacher is in your own village. An old woman named Grandmother Rin. You've probably seen her many times, but never really noticed her. She understands something important that will complete your learning." "What does she understand?" "That's for you to discover," Ajo said. "But I can tell you this, she has lived with profound peace for many years, and she's never traveled far from home. She's never studied with masters or learned special techniques. She simply lives in a way that embodies everything you've been learning." Kai felt both curious and slightly uncertain. He had traveled so far, learned so much, and now he was supposed to return home to learn from someone who had been there all along? "I know it seems strange," Ajo said, reading his expression. "But sometimes the deepest wisdom is found in the most ordinary places. You needed this journey to prepare you to see what was always there." That night, before sleep, Ajo gave Kai one more teaching. "As you lie down, practice being a friend to yourself. When you notice your mind being active or your body feeling restless, speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you care about. It's okay. You're safe. You can rest. Not forcing anything, just offering kindness." Kai lay on his sleeping mat and tried this practice. When anxiety arose, instead of thinking, "I shouldn't feel this way," he thought, "I notice some anxiety. It's okay. I'm safe here." When his mind started racing about tomorrow's journey, instead of criticizing himself for not being able to quiet his thoughts, he thought, "My mind is active tonight. That's all right. I don't have to fight it." The kindness he offered himself felt strange at first, unfamiliar. But it also felt like water on parched ground, nourishing something that had been dried out for years. Sleep came more gently that night. Not perfect, but infused with a quality of self-friendliness he had never experienced before. He was learning to be not his own enemy, but his own companion on this journey. In the morning, Kai prepared to leave. Ajo walked him to the edge of the bamboo grove. "Remember," the old teacher said, "all the practices you've learned work better with compassion. Presence is easier when you're kind to yourself for being distracted. Letting go is easier when you're gentle about what you're holding. Acceptance is easier when you accept yourself too." "Thank you, Master Ajo," Kai said, bowing deeply. "You've shown me how to stop being at war with myself." "And that," Ajo said warmly, "is one of the most important teachings in Zen Buddhism. Peace begins with how you treat yourself. Everything else flows from there." Kai set off on the road back toward his village. As he walked, he noticed the critical voice still arose sometimes. But now he had a different relationship with it. When it said harsh things, he could respond with kindness. "Thank you for trying to protect me, but that's not helpful right now." He was learning to be his own gentle teacher, his own compassionate friend. And in that gentleness, there was a peace more stable than anything he had found through trying to be perfect or forcing himself to be different. The journey home would take several days. But Kai walked with a lighter step, carrying not just the teachings he had learned, but a new kindness toward the person who had been learning them. The path east from the mountains led through farmland and small villages until Kai finally reached the market town Dogen had mentioned. It was the largest settlement he had seen since leaving his own village. The streets were crowded with merchants selling vegetables, cloth, pottery, and dried fish. People haggled over prices. Children ran between the stalls. Dogs barked. Carts rattled over the stone roads. The noise and activity were overwhelming after the silence of the mountain hermitage. Kai asked for directions to Master Bankei's temple and was pointed toward the center of town. He expected to find the temple on the outskirts, in some quiet corner away from the chaos. Instead, the temple was right in the middle of the marketplace, surrounded by the loudest, busiest stalls. The temple itself was modest but well maintained. Its doors stood open, and Kai could hear the sounds of the market flowing freely inside. He stepped through the entrance and found himself in a large room where several people sat in meditation. But unlike any meditation hall Kai had seen before, this one made no attempt to block out the world. The windows were open. The sounds of merchants shouting and customers bargaining filled the space. Someone was playing a flute badly somewhere nearby. A baby was crying. And in the midst of all this noise and activity, a group of people sat peacefully, eyes closed or softly open, completely at ease. At the front of the room sat an older man with a round face and kind eyes. He wore simple robes and had a gentle smile. He didn't look like he was straining to ignore the noise. He looked like he was resting in it, as comfortable as if he was sitting in a silent forest. When the meditation period ended, people bowed and went about their business. Some left the temple. Others stayed to sweep the floors or arrange flowers. The round-faced man stood and stretched, then noticed Kai standing uncertainly by the door. "You must be Kai," the man said, walking over with a warm smile. Dogen sent word through a traveling monk. "I'm Bankei. Welcome." "Master Bankei," Kai said, bowing, "thank you for receiving me. But I have to ask, why is your temple in such a noisy place? How can anyone meditate with all this chaos?" Bankei laughed, a genuine belly laugh that made his whole body shake. "Where else should a temple be? Life is here. People are here. This is where practice needs to happen, not in some perfect silence on a remote mountain." He gestured for Kai to follow him. They walked through the temple to a small garden in the back. Even here, the sounds of the market were present, though slightly muffled. They sat on a wooden bench beneath a cherry tree that had lost most of its blossoms. "Let me guess," Bankei said. "You've been learning about presence, about letting go, about emptiness. All very useful. But now you're wondering how to apply these teachings when life is messy and loud and nothing goes the way you want it to." Kai nodded. "Yes. On the mountain with Master Dogen, Everything was so quiet and simple. But here, I can feel my old anxiety coming back. The noise, the crowds, the chaos. I thought I was making progress, but maybe I was just hiding in peaceful places. Good observation, Bankei said. Many people use spiritual practice as a way to escape from life. They think peace means finding the perfect conditions and staying there. But that's not peace. That's just temporary comfort that falls apart the moment conditions change. He picked up a fallen cherry blossom from the bench. Real peace is what remains when conditions are difficult. When things are not the way you want them to be. When life is loud and messy and completely out of your control. Kai felt discouraged. So I'll never find peace because I can't control life. No, Bankei said gently. You'll find peace when you stop trying to control life. When you accept what is, rather than constantly fighting for what should be. He settled back against the bench. Let me tell you about someone I knew who learned this the hard way. There was a farmer named Takeshi who lived in the countryside north of here. He was a good farmer, skilled and knowledgeable. He understood soil and seasons. He worked hard and took pride in his crops. He had a wife and 3 children, and he was determined to provide well for them. Takeshi had very specific ideas about how things should be. The weather should be favorable. The crops should grow predictably. The market prices should be fair. His children should be obedient. His wife should manage the household efficiently. Everything in its proper place, everything according to plan. But of course, life rarely cooperates with our plans. One year, the spring rains came too late. Takeshi's crops got off to a poor start. He worried and complained to his wife every evening about the weather. It should have rained by now, he would say. The old farmers say this is the latest spring in 30 years. This shouldn't be happening. When the rains finally came, they came too hard. Flooding damaged some of his fields. Takeshi was furious. First too dry, now too wet, he shouted at the sky. Why can't the weather just be normal? His wife tried to comfort him. At least some of the fields are fine. We'll have enough. But Takeshi couldn't accept this. Some of the fields were damaged, which meant things were not as they should be. He spent hours each day walking through the flooded areas, cursing his bad luck, resenting the weather, feeling sorry for himself. When summer came, his remaining crops grew reasonably well despite the rough start. But then insects attacked the rice. Takeshi spent his days killing bugs and complaining. This shouldn't be happening. Other years we had no insects. Why this year? It's not fair. His wife pointed out that his neighbor's fields had no insects because the neighbor had planted a different variety of rice. Maybe next year we could try that variety, she suggested. But Takeshi rejected this idea. I shouldn't have to change varieties. The variety I planted should work. It's worked before. This is wrong. Everything that didn't match his expectations, Takeshi experienced as a personal injustice. The weather shouldn't be this way. The insects shouldn't be here. His son shouldn't have scraped his knee playing. His daughter shouldn't have dropped the water bucket. His wife shouldn't have burned the rice that one time. He lived in a constant state of resistance to reality. And this resistance made him miserable. It also made him unpleasant to be around. His wife grew tired of his complaining. His children avoided him. His neighbors stopped visiting because all he did was talk about how things should be different. By the time harvest came, Takeshi had worked himself into a state of bitter exhaustion. Yes, his yield was lower than usual. But it wasn't a disaster. His family had enough to eat and some extra to sell. They would be fine. But Takeshi couldn't see this because he was too busy resenting everything that hadn't gone according to his plan. One day, a traveling monk stopped at Takeshi's farm asking for food and shelter. Takeshi's wife welcomed him and prepared a meal. During dinner, Takeshi complained as usual about the terrible year he had endured. The monk listened patiently. When Takeshi finally finished his litany of complaints, the monk asked a simple question. "Did the weather consult you before deciding when to rain?" Takeshi looked confused. "What?" "Of course not." "Did the insects ask your permission before eating your rice?" "No, that's my point. They shouldn't have." "Shouldn't have?" The monk raised his eyebrows. "Based on what?" "Your preference? Do you think the universe is obligated to arrange itself according to your wishes?" Takeshi felt defensive. "I'm just saying things should be better. It's not unreasonable to want favorable weather and healthy crops." "Wanting is not the same as demanding," the monk said. "You can prefer certain conditions without requiring them. The suffering you're experiencing isn't coming from the late rains or the insects. It's coming from your refusal to accept reality as it is." "So I should just accept bad things happening?" "The things aren't bad or good," the monk replied. "They're just things. Rain comes late sometimes. Insects eat crops. This is how nature works. You're adding the judgment bad and then adding the resistance this shouldn't be. Both of those additions create your suffering." Takeshi sat quietly, disturbed by this perspective. The monk continued. "Every moment, you're in a war with reality. Reality does something and you say, 'No, that's wrong, that shouldn't happen.' Reality does something else, and again you say no. You're exhausting yourself fighting an opponent that never loses. Reality always wins, because reality is what's already happening. So I should just give up? Stop trying to make things better?" "Not at all," the monk said. "You can work with conditions as they are. You can plant different rice next year. You can adapt to late rains. You can respond skillfully to insects. But you can do all of this without the layer of resistance and resentment, without the constant complaint that things should be other than they are." That night, lying in bed, Takeshi thought about what the monk had said. He realized he had been making himself miserable all year over things he couldn't control. The late rain had been frustrating for a few days, but then he had carried that frustration for months, replaying it, resenting it, building a story about his terrible luck. The insects had been a challenge for a few weeks, but he had turned that challenge into a months-long grudge against reality itself. He thought about his neighbor who had planted different rice and had no insect problems. The neighbor hadn't complained. He had just quietly adapted. He had worked with conditions as they were, not as he wished they were. The next morning, Takeshi woke up and tried something different. Instead of immediately thinking about what was wrong or what should be different, he simply noticed what was. The sun was rising. His body was healthy enough to get out of bed. His family was safe. His remaining crops were growing. Were conditions perfect? No. Were they acceptable? Yes. Throughout the day, whenever he felt the familiar resistance rising, he practiced simply acknowledging reality. The weather is dry today. That's what's happening. Not, it should rain, or this is unfair. Just, this is what is. It was hard at first. His mind was so used to fighting everything, but gradually he noticed something changing. The same conditions that had seemed unbearable became simply what was present. And when he stopped adding resistance, the conditions themselves didn't hurt as much. By the end of the harvest season, Takeshi had transformed completely. He still worked hard. He still planned and adapted. But he had stopped the exhausting battle with reality. His wife noticed the change. His children started spending time with him again. His neighbor commented that Takeshi seemed like a different person. "What happened to you?" the neighbor asked. "I stopped fighting the weather," Takeshi replied with a smile. "It turns out life is much easier when you work with what is, rather than demanding what should be." Bankei looked at Kai. Takeshi's story shows something essential about Zen Buddhism. So much of our suffering comes from resistance, from demanding that reality be different than it is. The late rains weren't suffering. Takeshi's refusal to accept them was suffering. Kai nodded slowly. He recognized this pattern in himself. How many nights had he lain awake thinking, "I shouldn't feel anxious," or "My mind shouldn't be racing," or "I should be able to sleep"? He had been at war with his own experience, demanding it be different, and that war was exhausting. "I do this with my own mind," Kai said. "I think my thoughts shouldn't be racing. My anxiety shouldn't be here. I should be peaceful. But the thoughts are here. The anxiety is here. I'm just making it worse by fighting it." "Yes," Bankei said warmly. "You're beginning to understand. The restless mind isn't the problem. The refusal to have a restless mind is the problem." He stood up and gestured for Kai to follow him back inside. They walked through the temple, where the afternoon market noise was even louder than before. Someone was having an argument right outside the window. A cart rolled by with a squeaking wheel. Children were playing some loud game. Bankei sat down on a cushion and invited Kai to do the same. "Sit here and meditate with me for a while." Kai sat down and closed his eyes. Immediately, he was aware of all the noise. The shouting, the squeaking, the children. His mind wanted to resist it. "This shouldn't be here. I can't meditate with all this noise. It should be quiet." But then he remembered Bankei's teaching. He practiced simply accepting the sounds. They were here. That was reality. He didn't have to like them, but he could stop demanding they be different. Something shifted. The sounds didn't go away, but his relationship to them changed. Instead of fighting them, he let them be part of his experience. And in that acceptance, there was a surprising ease. The sounds became almost like texture, like waves of the ocean. Still present, but no longer disturbing. After some time, Bankei spoke softly. "How was that?" "Different," Kai said. "The noise didn't go away, but I stopped suffering over it." "That's acceptance," Bankei said. "Not resignation or defeat. Just the simple acknowledgement of what is, without the extra layer of resistance that creates suffering." He settled more comfortably on his cushion. "Let me tell you about another person who learned this teaching. Her name was Yumi, and she came to this temple about 2 years ago in a state of desperation. She was a young mother with a baby who cried constantly. The baby had some illness that the doctors couldn't quite identify or cure. He wasn't in danger, but he was uncomfortable and fussy all the time. Yumi had tried everything. Different foods, different ways of holding him, different remedies from different healers. Nothing worked. The baby cried and cried and cried. The constant crying was breaking Yumi apart. She wasn't sleeping. She was exhausted. But worse than the physical exhaustion was the mental torture she was putting herself through. This shouldn't be happening, she would think. Other babies don't cry this much. My baby should be happy and peaceful. There must be something wrong that I'm not seeing. I must be a bad mother. She came to the temple one afternoon, the crying baby in her arms, tears streaming down her face. "Master Bankei," she said, "I can't take this anymore. My baby won't stop crying. I've tried everything. I don't know what to do. I'm failing as a mother." I invited her to sit down right here in this meditation hall, even though the baby was crying loudly. Other people were trying to meditate, but I gestured for them to continue their practice. "Tell me," I said to Yumi, "what would it mean if you accepted that your baby cries?" She looked shocked. "Accept it? I can't accept it. He's suffering. I need to fix it." "You've been trying to fix it for months," I pointed out. "You've tried everything you can think of. You've seen doctors and healers. You're doing everything a good mother should do. But still, the crying continues. So what if you accepted that this is how things are right now?" "But he shouldn't be crying this much," Yumi protested. "According to what?" I asked. "According to your image of how babies should be? But this baby is not that image. This baby is this baby. And right now, this baby cries a lot. That's the reality." Yumi started crying again. "But it's so hard. I can't sleep. I can't think. I feel like I'm losing my mind." "Yes," I said gently. "It is hard. And you're making it harder by demanding it be different. You're experiencing the crying, which is difficult. And on top of that, you're experiencing your resistance to the crying, your belief that it shouldn't be happening, your guilt that you can't fix it. That's 3 layers of suffering when one would be enough." She sat with this for a moment, rocking the crying baby. "So what do I do?" "You acknowledge what is," I said. "Right now, you have a baby who cries a lot. You don't know why. You can't fix it immediately. These are the facts. Can you let these facts be true without adding the story that they're wrong or that you're failing?" "It feels like giving up," Yumi said. "There's a difference between acceptance and giving up," I explained. Giving up means stopping your care and effort. Acceptance means continuing to care while recognizing that outcomes are not fully in your control. You can keep trying things, keep seeking help, keep being the best mother you can be. But you can do all of this without the torture of demanding that reality be different right now. I asked Yumi to try an experiment. For the next hour, practice accepting exactly what is. The baby is crying. That's what's happening. You feel tired. That's what's happening. Your mind wants it to be different. That's also what's happening. Just let all of it be exactly as it is without trying to change any of it. She looked doubtful, but agreed to try. She sat there in the meditation hall, the baby crying in her arms, and practiced simple acceptance. This is what is. This is what is. This is what is. At first, nothing changed. The baby still cried. She still felt exhausted. But after about 20 minutes, something subtle shifted. Her shoulders, which had been up near her ears with tension, slowly lowered. Her jaw, which had been clenched tight, gradually relaxed. She was still holding a crying baby, but she had stopped fighting it. The baby, interestingly, seemed to sense this change. His crying became less frantic. It didn't stop, but it softened somehow. And then, after about 40 minutes, he fell asleep. Just fell asleep in her arms, mid-cry. Yumi looked at me with wide eyes. "What just happened?" "You stopped fighting," I said. And babies are very sensitive to their mother's state. When you were resisting and tense and desperate, he felt that and couldn't settle. When you finally accepted the situation, he felt that too. This wasn't a magic cure. The baby didn't suddenly become easy. He still cried more than most babies. But Yumi's relationship to the crying transformed. She learned to meet each moment as it was, not as she wished it were. When the baby cried, she acknowledged it and did what she could to comfort him without the extra layer of mental torture about how it shouldn't be happening. Her sleep improved too. When she lay down at night, she would practice the same acceptance. "I'm tired right now." That's what is. The baby might wake up soon. That's possible. My mind is worried. That's what's happening. Just simple acknowledgement without resistance. The baby's crying did gradually improve over the following months. The doctors eventually figured out he had a digestive issue that resolved on its own as he grew. But even before the crying stopped, Yumi had found peace with the situation. She had learned what Zen Buddhism teaches. Peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of acceptance. Bunkei looked at Kai with compassionate eyes. "This is what I want you to understand. You came on this journey thinking your restless mind was the problem. But the restless mind is just a restless mind. The problem is your belief that it shouldn't be restless, your fight to make it different, your judgment that something is wrong with you." Kai felt tears come to his eyes. He had been so cruel to himself, demanding that his mind be different, treating his anxiety as an enemy, believing he was broken. "So I should just accept that I can't sleep?" "Not quite," Bankei said. "You accept what is right now. Right now, you're a person who has struggled with sleep. That's what is. But acceptance doesn't mean passivity. You can still practice the teachings you've learned. You can still work with your mind skillfully. But you do it from a place of acceptance rather than resistance." He smiled. Think of it this way. A gardener accepts that weeds grow. He doesn't stand in the garden saying, "There shouldn't be weeds." He just pulls them, calmly, as part of gardening. He accepts that weeds are part of having a garden. You can accept that a busy mind is part of being human and still work with it skillfully. That evening, Kai stayed at the temple for the evening meditation. The market was closing down, but there was still noise. People walking home. Shutters closing. Dogs barking. Someone singing off-key. Kai sat and practiced acceptance. The sounds were here. His thoughts were here. Some anxiety was here. All of it was what was happening right now. He didn't try to push any of it away. He didn't demand that conditions be perfect before he could be at peace. And in that simple acceptance, there was a quality of peace he had never found through trying to control or fix everything. Not the peace of perfect silence, but the peace of being at ease with what is. After meditation, Bankei gave Kai one final teaching. Tomorrow, you'll continue your journey. The next teacher you need to meet is Master Iho. He lives in a temple, a day's walk west from here. He will teach you about compassion, especially compassion for yourself. Because I notice you're still quite harsh with yourself, even as you're learning these teachings. Kai nodded. This was true. He had been judging himself throughout the day for not understanding things quickly enough, for still feeling anxious, for not being as peaceful as he thought he should be. Ijo will show you how to treat yourself with the same kindness you would show a dear friend, Bankei continued. This is essential for Zen Buddhism. Peace without compassion is just another form of hardness. You need both acceptance and gentleness. Thank you, Master Bankei, Kai said, bowing deeply. You've shown me how much suffering I create by demanding that reality be different. And now you know, Bankei said with his warm smile, that peace is always available, even in noise and difficulty and imperfection. It's available the moment you stop fighting what is and start meeting life as it actually comes. That night, Kai slept in the temple guest room. The market town was quieter at night, but not silent. There were still sounds. Dogs, distant voices, the wind through the streets. Kai's mind still produced thoughts, and some anxiety still moved through his body. But he practiced what Bankei taught him. This is what is. And in that simple acceptance, without demanding that everything be perfect before he could rest, sleep came more naturally than it had in years. Not perfect sleep. Not dreamless peace. Just ordinary sleep, accepted as it was, which turned out to be enough. The journey back to his village took Kai 3 days. The roads were familiar now, each turn and landmark bringing memories. He had walked this way when leaving, his mind full of desperation and hope. Now he walked back changed, though he couldn't quite say how. He practiced as he walked, being present to each step, letting thoughts flow through without holding them, resting in the awareness beneath his identity, accepting what was, speaking kindly to himself when the critical voice arose. All the teachings were with him, woven together like threads in cloth. As Kai approached his village on the afternoon of the 3rd day, he felt a strange mixture of feelings. Nervousness about seeing his family again. Curiosity about this grandmother Rin he was supposed to find. And underneath it all, a quiet steadiness that hadn't been there before. The village looked exactly the same. The same houses, the same streets, the same people going about their daily lives. But Kai saw it all differently now. He noticed things he had never paid attention to before. The way afternoon light fell on the stone walls. The sound of children playing by the well. The smell of cooking fires starting up for the evening meal. He passed his family's grain shop. Through the window, he could see his brother weighing out rice for a customer. His mother was in the back, organizing supplies. They looked busy and content. Kai felt a pang of guilt for leaving, but then remembered Eijo's teaching about compassion. He had done what he needed to do. They had managed without him. Everyone was okay. Kai asked an older man where he might find Grandmother Rin. The man pointed to a small house at the edge of the village near the vegetable fields. Old Rin? She's usually in her garden this time of day. Kai walked to the house. It was simple, like all the houses in the village, with a small garden in front. And there, tending to the vegetables with careful attention, was an old woman he had seen 100 times but never really noticed. Grandmother Rin was bent with age, her face deeply lined, her hair completely white. She wore simple, faded clothes and moved slowly as she worked. There was nothing remarkable about her at first glance. Just an ordinary old woman doing ordinary work. But as Kai watched her for a moment, he noticed something. She moved with complete attention, the way Hakuin had moved in his garden. She seemed utterly at peace, the way Suen had been by the river. She worked with acceptance of what was, like Bankei. And there was a gentle quality to how she treated even the plants, like Echo's compassion. Kai approached the low fence around her garden. "Grandmother Rin?" She looked up and smiled, her face creasing into 1,000 wrinkles. Her eyes were bright and clear despite her age. "You must be young Kai." The boy from the grain shop who went traveling. She straightened up slowly, one hand on her back. "I heard you'd left to find peace. Did you find it?" "I think I'm beginning to," Kai said. "Master Eho sent me to learn from you." Grandmother Rin laughed, a dry, pleasant sound. "Learn from me? I'm just an old woman growing vegetables. But come in, come in. We'll have tea." She led Kai through her small house. It was neat and simple. A sleeping mat, a low table, a few dishes, a small altar with flowers. Nothing extra, but nothing neglected. Everything seemed to be exactly where it should be. They sat at her table and she prepared tea with unhurried movements. Each action seemed complete in itself. Fetching the water, heating it over the fire, preparing the cups. There was no sense of hurry, no sense that she was eager to get to something else. This moment, making tea, was enough. When she poured the tea, Kai noticed her hands were gnarled with age and work, but they held the pot steadily. She served him first, then herself, and they drank in comfortable silence. "So," Grandmother Rin finally said, "what did the masters teach you?" Kai thought about how to summarize his journey. "Master Hakuin taught me about being present. Master Soen taught me about letting go. Master Dogen showed me emptiness. Master Bankei taught acceptance. Master Ijo taught compassion." "Good teachings," she nodded. "All true. But what are you supposed to learn from me?" "I don't know," Kai admitted. "Ijo said you've lived with profound peace your whole life, but you've never studied with masters or learned special techniques. He said you simply live in a way that embodies all these teachings." Grandmother Rin laughed again. "He gives me too much credit. I don't embody anything. I just live." "But how?" Kai asked. "How do you live with such peace?" She sipped her tea thoughtfully. "Let me tell you about my life, and maybe you'll see. There's no secret, nothing special. Just an ordinary life, lived simply. I was born in this village 78 years ago. My father was a farmer, my mother a weaver. I was the youngest of 5 children. We didn't have much, but we had enough. I grew up helping with the farm work, learning to plant and harvest, to read the weather and the seasons. When I was 18, I married a man from the neighboring village. He was a good man, steady and kind. We had 3 children together, 2 daughters and a son. We built this little house. He worked in the fields, and I tended the garden and raised the children. It was an ordinary life. We had good years and hard years. Some harvests were abundant, some were poor. The children got sick sometimes, but they recovered. My husband and I argued occasionally, then made peace. Nothing dramatic, nothing special. Just the ordinary flow of life. I never had big questions about meaning or purpose. I just did what needed to be done each day. Feed the children. Tend the garden. Cook the meals. Mend the clothes. Sleep when tired. Wake when rested. Simple things, done with attention. My husband died 15 years ago. The children are grown now with families of their own. They live in other villages, visiting when they can. So now I live alone, which is also fine. I tend my garden. I help neighbors when they need it. I sit in the evening and watch the sun set. Nothing special. Just an ordinary old woman living an ordinary life. She paused to pour more tea for both of them. Kai waited, sensing there was more. But here's the thing I discovered, she continued. This ordinary life, when you actually pay attention to it, when you're fully present to it, is extraordinary. Not because anything special happens, but because everything is already complete just as it is. She gestured around her simple house. People think peace requires something extra. Special knowledge, special experiences, special conditions. But I found it right here, in the most ordinary moments. Pulling weeds, washing dishes, watching the seasons change. These simple things, when you're truly present to them, contain everything. Kai leaned forward, trying to understand. But didn't you ever want more? Didn't you ever feel like something was missing? Sometimes, when I was younger, she admitted. I would hear about people traveling to distant places or studying with great teachers, and I would wonder if I was missing something by staying here. But then I realized I was already traveling. Every day was a journey. Every moment was a teaching. I just had to pay attention. She stood up slowly and walked to her small altar. You see these flowers? I picked them this morning from my garden. They're just ordinary flowers, the kind that grow everywhere. But when I arranged them this morning, I really looked at them. The color, the shape, the way they bend on their stems. And in that looking, there was such beauty, such completeness. Nothing was missing. Kai thought about all the places he had traveled, all the teachers he had met. They had taught him profound things. But this old woman, who had never left her village, seemed to understand something just as deep. Let me tell you about a moment I remember clearly, Grandmother Rin said, settling back at the table. It was about 20 years ago, on an ordinary autumn afternoon. I was washing rice for dinner, standing by the well. The sun was getting lower in the sky. My hands were in the cold water, rubbing the rice grains between my fingers. And suddenly, I really felt it. The coolness of the water. The smooth texture of the rice. The sound of the water splashing. The warmth of the sun on my back. The way the light made everything glow golden. Nothing had changed, but everything was somehow vivid and alive and perfect. I wasn't doing anything special. I wasn't meditating or practicing any technique. I was just washing rice, completely present to the simple act of washing rice. And in that moment, I understood something. This was it. This was life. Right here, in this ordinary moment of washing rice by the well. All my life, I realized, I had been having moments like this, but I had been too busy or distracted to notice. When I nursed my babies, really feeling their weight in my arms and their breath against my chest. When I worked in the garden, my hands in the soil, the sun warm on my neck. When I sat with my husband in the evening, not talking, just being together. These weren't breaks from real life. These were real life. And they had been here all along, waiting to be noticed. After that moment by the well, I started paying more attention. Not in a forced way, not trying to make every moment special. Just being present to what was actually happening. Chopping vegetables, sweeping the floor, feeding the chickens, walking to the market. Each simple action, when I was really there for it, was complete and satisfying. But what about when things are difficult? Kai asked. When there's pain or loss or hardship? Those are part of life too, Grandmother Rin said simply. When my husband died, I grieved. It hurt. But I was present to the grief, not trying to escape it or pretend it wasn't happening. I cried when I needed to cry. I felt lonely when loneliness came. And gradually, naturally, the grief softened and changed, the way everything changes. She looked at Kai with those clear old eyes. You see, I think people often misunderstand what peace means. They think it means feeling happy all the time or having no problems. But that's not peace. That's just favorable conditions which come and go. Real peace is being fully present to life as it actually is, pleasant or unpleasant, easy or difficult. Kai nodded slowly. The masters taught me similar things. But somehow, hearing it from you, it feels different, more accessible. Because I'm not a master, she smiled. I'm just someone who learned to be where I am. You don't need special knowledge for that. You just need to stop running away from your own life. She stood up. Come, help me in the garden before it gets dark. We can talk while we work. They went outside and Grandmother Rin showed Kai what needed to be done. Pulling a few weeds, checking the vegetables, watering the plants that looked dry. Simple tasks done with care. As they worked side by side, she continued talking. You know, when you left the village to find peace, everyone understood. Poor Kai, they said. He can't sleep. He needs help. And maybe you did need to go. Maybe the journey was necessary for you. But the funny thing is, what you were looking for was also right here, in your own village, in your own life. I don't think I could have seen it before, Kai said, gently pulling weeds around a tomato plant. I needed to learn from the masters first. Perhaps, she agreed. Or perhaps you just needed to be ready to see it. Sometimes we have to look far away before we can see what's close. They worked in silence for a while. Kai noticed he was completely absorbed in the simple task. His hands in the soil, the smell of earth, the evening air cooling, the sound of birds settling for the night. Nothing special, nothing dramatic, but somehow complete, somehow enough. Grandmother Rin, Kai said after a while, how do you sleep at night? She laughed. I lie down when I'm tired and I sleep. Nothing complicated. But don't you have thoughts? Worries? Oh, thoughts come, she said. I'm old. I think about my health sometimes, about my children, about whether the garden will do well. But I don't hold on to the thoughts. They come, I notice them, they go, like clouds passing by, and then I sleep. How did you learn to do that? She thought about this while tying up a vine. I don't know if I learned it exactly. I just noticed that fighting with my thoughts made them stronger. When I would lie awake thinking, I shouldn't be thinking about this, the thoughts would multiply. But when I just let them be there, like visitors passing through, they would eventually quiet down on their own. She straightened up, one hand on her back again. I think that's what all your masters were teaching you in different ways. Stop fighting. Stop demanding things be different. Just be present to what is, with acceptance and kindness. Whether you're sitting in meditation or washing dishes or lying down to sleep, it's all the same practice. As the sun set, they finished the garden work and went back inside. Grandmother Rin lit a small lamp and prepared a simple dinner. Rice, pickled vegetables, miso soup. Nothing fancy, but prepared with care and eaten with attention. After dinner, she showed Kai where he could sleep. Stay tonight, she said. Your family will want to see you tomorrow. Tonight, rest here. Kai spread out his sleeping mat in her small guest area. Through the paper walls, he could hear the sounds of the village settling for the night. Dogs barking in the distance. Someone calling their children inside. The wind in the trees. Before lying down, he thought about everything Grandmother Rin had shown him. Not through special teachings or profound stories, but through the simple way she lived. Present to each moment. Accepting what comes. Treating everything with gentle attention. Finding completeness in ordinary actions. And he realized this was what he had been seeking all along. Not some distant, exotic peace that required years of training, but this simple, close peace that comes from being fully present to your own life, exactly as it is. He lay down on the mat. His mind produced its usual thoughts, wondering what tomorrow would bring, thinking about his family, reviewing the day. But now, he didn't fight the thoughts. He let them flow through, like Soan's river. He rested in the awareness beneath them, like Dogen taught. He accepted them without resistance, like Bankei showed him. He spoke kindly to himself about them, like Ijo demonstrated. And underneath all of it, there was this simple presence, this being here that Grandmother Rin embodied so naturally. In the morning, Kai woke to the sound of Grandmother Rin already moving about, preparing tea. The early light was soft through the paper windows. He felt rested in a way that wasn't about how many hours he had slept, but about a deeper quality of rest. They had tea together in the quiet morning. Finally, Grandmother Rin spoke. So, will you go back to your family's shop? Kai had been wondering this himself. I think so. Not because I have to, but because it's my life. And I see now that peace isn't somewhere else. It's in how I meet whatever is in front of me. Good, she nodded approvingly. Zen Buddhism isn't about escaping your life. It's about being fully present to the life you have. Whether that's running a grain shop or tending a garden or anything else. She poured more tea. You know, You'll probably forget these teachings sometimes. You'll get busy and distracted. Your mind will race again. You might have trouble sleeping again. This is normal. The teachings aren't meant to make you perfect. They're just meant to give you a way back when you notice you've wandered off. A way back to what? Kai asked. To here, she said simply. To now. To the only place and time where life actually happens. Kai spent the rest of the morning with Grandmother Rin, helping with small tasks around her house. Sweeping the floor, washing dishes, checking the garden again. Each simple action felt complete, satisfying. Nothing special, but somehow enough. Before he left, she walked him to her gate. "Thank you for visiting an old woman," she said with a smile. "Thank you for teaching me," Kai replied, bowing deeply. "I didn't teach you anything you didn't already know," she said. "I just reminded you. That's what teachers do. We point at what's already here." Kai walked through the village toward his family's shop. His hands were a little nervous, but underneath the nervousness was a steadiness. He didn't know exactly how his family would receive him, but he was ready to meet whatever came. As he approached the shop, his mother looked up and saw him through the window. Her face lit up, and she rushed to the door. "Kai, you're back." She embraced him, and Kai let himself be held, present to the feeling of her arms around him, her familiar smell, the relief in her voice. His brother came from the back of the shop, surprised but pleased. His father appeared from the storage room, trying to look stern but unable to hide his gladness. They asked him about his journey, and Kai told them about the masters he had met and the teachings he had learned. They listened with interest, though he could tell they didn't fully understand. That was okay. He didn't need them to understand. "So, will you stay?" his mother asked hopefully. "Will you work in the shop again?" "Yes," Kai said. "If you'll have me back." "Of course," his father said gruffly. "We could use the help." And so Kai returned to his ordinary life. Working in the grain shop, measuring out rice and barley for customers, keeping accounts, sweeping the floor. The same tasks he had done before, but now he did them differently. With presence, with attention, with acceptance of what each moment brought. Some nights he slept well. Some nights he didn't. But even the sleepless nights were different now. He didn't fight them. He didn't lie there thinking he was broken or that something was wrong. He just rested in awareness, letting thoughts flow through, being kind to himself, accepting the moment as it was. And gradually, naturally, sleep became easier. Not because he had conquered it or figured it out, but because he had stopped making it such a problem. He had stopped demanding that his experience be different than it was. The villagers noticed a change in Kai. He seemed calmer, more present. He smiled more easily. He didn't seem to be in a hurry all the time. Some asked him what had happened on his journey, but Kai found it hard to explain. How could he tell them he had traveled far to learn how to be right here? Often in the evenings, Kai would visit Grandmother Rin. They would work in her garden together or simply sit in her small house drinking tea. They didn't always talk. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, two people being present to the moment, finding completeness in the simple act of sitting together. One evening, months after his return, Kai was sitting with Grandmother Rin watching the sunset. The sky was orange and pink, the air was cooling, and everything was quiet and peaceful. "You know," Kai said, "when I first left the village, I thought peace was something I needed to find somewhere else. Something special that only masters could teach. But it was here all along, wasn't it?" Grandmother Rin smiled. "It was always here. In the grain shop. In the village. In your own life. You just weren't ready to see it. Sometimes we need to search far away before we can appreciate what's close." All those teachings, Kai continued, presence, letting go, emptiness, acceptance, compassion. You live them all without thinking about them. Because they're not separate things, she said. They're all just different ways of describing the same thing. Being fully present to life as it is. Nothing more complicated than that. They sat in silence as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Kai felt a deep contentment, not because everything in his life was perfect, but because he was fully here for the life he had. This simple, ordinary life that turned out to be extraordinary when you actually paid attention to it. "Thank you," Kai said quietly, "for showing me that the most profound wisdom is found in the most ordinary places." "And thank you," Grandmother Rin replied, "for reminding an old woman that her simple life has value. Sometimes we need someone to come back from a journey before we can see what was always precious about home." As darkness fell over the village, Kai felt a peace more stable than anything he had imagined when he first set out. Not the peace of having no problems or challenges, but the peace of being fully present to whatever life brings. The peace that Zen Buddhism had been pointing to all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting in each ordinary moment. The seasons turned, and Kai settled back into village life. Winter came with cold winds and early darkness. Spring brought rain and new growth. Summer heated the fields and lengthened the days. Autumn arrived with harvest and preparation for winter again. Through it all, Kai worked in the grain shop, lived with his family, and practiced what he had learned. But practice looked different now than he had imagined. It wasn't something separate from daily life, something he did in addition to his regular activities. It was simply how he met each moment as it came. Kai's journey took him far from home, only to discover that what he sought had been waiting in the most ordinary places all along. Through mountains and rivers, temples and marketplaces, he learned the simple truths of Zen Buddhism. Not complicated philosophies, but gentle reminders of what it means to be fully alive. Tonight, you've explored the gentle wisdom of Zen Buddhism through stories and teachings that have been passed down for centuries. Simple truths about finding peace, not through complicated practices, but through being fully present to your own life. And you've seen how the extraordinary lives within the ordinary. How peace isn't found in distant places or perfect conditions, but right here in simple moments. In breathing, in resting, in the quiet acceptance of this night. The wisdom of Zen Buddhism isn't something to memorize or master. It's something to return to, gently, whenever you notice you've wandered away. Like coming home after a long journey, only to discover home was never really left behind. You don't need to hold these teachings tightly. They're not possessions to guard or achievements to maintain. They're more like signposts pointing you back to what's already here. Back to this breath. Back to this moment. Back to the natural peace that exists when you stop fighting with your own experience. Each teaching supports the others. Presence helps you notice when you're holding too tightly. Letting go creates space for acceptance. Acceptance allows compassion to arise naturally. And all of it together helps you rest in the awareness that you already are, beneath all the thoughts and worries and identities. Tonight, as sleep approaches, you can trust these teachings to support you even when you're not thinking about them. They've already begun their quiet work, loosening the grip of old patterns, creating space for natural rest to unfold. You've learned about presence, the practice of returning again and again to this moment, this breath, instead of dwelling in yesterday or worrying about tomorrow. This simple act of being here is always available to you. You've discovered the wisdom of letting go. How holding tightly to thoughts and worries exhausts you, while allowing them to flow through brings natural ease. Like water moving through open hands, life flows more smoothly when you stop trying to grasp it. You've touched the truth of emptiness, that beneath all your roles and identities, you are spacious awareness itself. Not broken, not needing to be fixed, just naturally at peace when you stop trying so hard to be someone. You've understood acceptance. How resisting what is creates suffering, while meeting each moment as it comes brings rest. Even imperfect moments, even difficult feelings, can be held with gentle acknowledgement. You felt compassion for yourself. The kindness of treating yourself as you would treat a dear friend who is tired and needs rest. This gentleness opens the door to deeper peace. These aren't just ideas to think about. They're invitations to live differently, starting right now. As you settle into sleep tonight, let these teachings support you. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow your body to release into the comfort beneath you. Notice thoughts flowing through without needing to follow them. Accept this moment, this breath, exactly as it is. Be kind to yourself as rest comes in its own time. Peace is not somewhere else. It's here, in the simple act of being present to your own experience. Always available, always waiting, in each ordinary moment. You may not remember every story you heard tonight when you wake tomorrow. That's perfectly fine. The teachings work not through memorization, but through gentle absorption. Like water soaking into soil, these insights settle into places deeper than conscious thought. What matters isn't perfect understanding or flawless practice. What matters is the simple willingness to return to presence when you notice you've drifted away. To soften when you find yourself holding tight. To accept what is rather than demanding what should be. These small shifts, repeated gently over time, transform everything. The peace you've been seeking doesn't require you to be different than you are. It doesn't need you to be more spiritual, more disciplined, more evolved. It simply invites you to stop abandoning this moment in search of a better one. Right now, in this very breath, nothing is wrong. Your body knows how to rest. Your mind knows how to settle. You don't have to force or control any of it. You just have to stop interfering with the natural intelligence that's been keeping you alive all along. As you lie here tonight, you're not trying to achieve some perfect state of peace. You're simply allowing yourself to rest in the awareness that's already peaceful, already complete, already home. This awareness has been here through every difficulty, every restless night, every worried thought. Steady and unchanged, waiting for you to notice it. The journey always leads back here, to this moment, to this breath. to the simple, profound peace of being exactly where you are. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.